Peace, fam. This is Brother Harold from HawkTheHeart.com. Back with another reaction video. Remember to please like, subscribe, and also share. And once again, we're going to get right into it.
Today to say loud and clear, with President Trump, crypto finally has a champion and an ally in the White House. Our administration, we prioritize eliminating the rules, the red tape, and the lawfare that we saw aimed at crypto by our predecessor. We reject regulators.
Donald Trump wants to numb this country into believing that this is just how government works, that he's owed this, that every president is owed this, that government has always been corrupt and he's just doing it out in the open. But this is not how government works.
So Vice President J.D. Vance saying crypto finally has a champion in the White House, and Senator Chris Murphy calling it brazen, unconstitutional corruption. At the center of it all, a luxury dinner at Trump's golf club last week where access to the president was the prize and meme coin millions paved the way. Now, many are demanding a comprehensive list of who actually attended and where their money comes from. That dinner is also raising questions in Washington about whether Donald Trump is using the office of the presidency to fill his own pockets.
Trump advertised his gala dinner as the most exclusive invitation in the world. Chinese billionaire Justin Sun, one of just 220 mainly foreign guests, posted a video of the experience on his Instagram account. The aim was to promote sales of Trump's cryptocurrency, which he issued just before his inauguration. The biggest investors, including Sun, were the ones given a seat at the table. Trump saw no problem with the event, calling it private and rejecting claims that he was using it to funnel money to his personal bank account and that the guests were using it to buy access to the President of the United States. But Trump's opponents were unequivocal in their condemnation.
We are here today to talk about exactly one topic: corruption. Corruption in its ugliest form. Donald Trump is using the presidency of the United States to make himself richer through crypto. And he's doing it right out there in plain sight.
The dinner is just the latest example of what critics say is the president's exploitation of his position for private gain. There's no clear information on exactly how much Trump's income has increased since he began his second term. But Forbes estimated his net worth in March at just over $5 billion, $1 billion more than last year. The White House insists there's no conflict of interest and no wrongdoing because the Trump family business is now being run by the president's sons and that Donald Sr.'s assets are in a trust managed by his children. But Trump's recent trip to the Gulf had even right-wing commentators asking questions about the blurring of the president's personal, political and commercial interests. And it wasn't just the controversial offer from Qatar of a plane to replace Air Force One, which many legal experts in the US fear could violate laws on taking gifts, something Trump refutes.
I mean, I could be a stupid person and say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane. But I thought it was a great gesture.
Also raising eyebrows was the arrival of Trump's sons in the Gulf, just 2 weeks ahead of their father, and their success in securing a slew of deals for real estate projects, golf courses and crypto contracts, all worth billions in additional wealth for the Trump family. And despite claims that their father will not personally benefit from these investments, critics say it seems unlikely the timing of the visit was coincidental, fueling concerns that Trump is using all the power at his disposal to turn the highest officer in America into a money-making machine.
I'd like to welcome Jody Vittori, a professor at Georgetown University, where she explores the nexus of corruption and U.S. national security, joining us today from Washington, D.C. So let's start broad here. How unusual is it for a sitting U.S. president to host a crypto fundraising dinner at his own commercial property?
It's remarkable. This has never occurred before, in part because crypto is a relatively new sort of currency or whatever you want to call it, but in part just this very, very blatant hosting of a dinner that is available, that is clearly individuals who paid for it. Not only did they pay for it, but there was this bizarre set of auction that occurred. I mean, presidents before have done fundraising dinners and so forth. The fact that it was at his private residence, but also included a private tour of the White House for certain groups afterwards. The amount of secrecy that was involved with it, the fact that there was auditioning through how much cryptocurrency that you bought was involved, the highly questionable nature of cryptocurrency itself and whether it even should be considered a cryptocurrency. All of these really stand out as incredibly unique in the history of the United States when it comes to fundraising. And again, it wasn't for a political party. It was for his own personal private benefit. So this is really very, very unique.
Yeah, these are important distinctions to make. Another thing I find interesting about this dinner is that it involved high net worth foreign nationals. What are the ethical and legal concerns that this would raise?
A number of them. We have the emoluments clause. It's part of the Constitution. And not only is it part of the Constitution, but it was one of those areas that actually moved over from the Articles of Confederation, which had existed before the Constitution. It was actually one of the items that was moved over from that prior agreement amongst the original states and the Founding Fathers to the actual U.S. Constitution itself, signed in 1787. So it was incredibly important to the Founding Fathers themselves to minimize the ability of foreign individuals to be able to give money to presidents, and other politicians in office. They had seen in their history in the 18th century how it was that foreign potentates could, basically like in a bad movie, hand a chest full of cash or gold to a foreign power and then have that leader acting on behalf of that foreign power and not acting on behalf of their citizenry. So it's always been very illegal in the United States. The Trump administration and Trump himself and his family members seem to have found an interesting loophole in that through the use of cryptocurrency, their use of private business. We know a few of the foreign members who attended, but we don't know all of the members who attended because it was a private business, because it was on private property, and because the Supreme Court almost a year ago gave a remarkable amount of impunity to any future U.S. president, in this case to Trump, to be able to engage in acts that would normally be highly questionable. All of that together puts real questions. Under normal circumstances, it would be sort of a slam dunk that this is illegal. But in the current environment that we're in, with the Supreme Court decision in Trump versus the United States, with how he used cryptocurrency, the anonymity of those involved, all of those lead to real questions about, would it actually hold up in a court of law that it's illegal? You also have the issue because the President of the United States, particularly since Trump versus the United States, is not treated in laws the same way as others. Conflict of interest laws, for example, don't apply in the same way that it applies to everybody else in his particular case. The normal sanction for these issues would be to have impeachment, but he's already impeached twice. He's gotten away with incredible levels of activity, including organized basically an attempted coup attempt, and yet he's still not only not been impeached, and without that impeachment, he's not been tried for those particular crimes. Those crimes are moving very, very slowly through the courts, of course, and this is part of where the Supreme Court decision came down. It's very hard to see how he would be impeached.
Yeah.
Additionally, he has worked very hard to make sure that those who would be a check on his power in the executive branch, he's broken a lot of the norms in the executive branch by putting individuals into the executive branch who are willing to politicize office, it appears. People like Pam Bondi, people like Kash Patel, who have made it clear even before they were in office, they would probably not go after his friends or his cronies and so forth. And even more interestingly, on the conflict of interest side, how many of those individuals themselves have been personally involved in cryptocurrency related items? Famously the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Treasury, but Kash Patel himself has been involved in cryptocurrency. Even the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the new one that is due to be approved to come in, he's even been involved in cryptocurrency. He has an unusual background compared to a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Well, so I guess can I just jump in to ask a question? Because I'm wondering if you think that the U.S. laws on the books are not strong enough to deal with this, or where you see issues in the way U.S. government works that has allowed for all these loopholes to exist?
So there are always a lot of loopholes in the law, and there's always been a certain amount of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And all political systems need a little bit of that to get things done. Where the Trump administration has come in, particularly in his first term, is he was very good at finding the loopholes where people had not done things because it was the norm, it wasn't expected. People just didn't think about it. Like, who would ever think of hosting a cryptocurrency dinner? Which prior president before would even think of having their own cryptocurrency? So he and his supporters have been very good at finding these loopholes. This is where one of the issues with the prior Biden administration, I think, really stands out, because for 2 years, the Biden administration had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and could have closed a lot of these loopholes. A lot of these loopholes really stood out by the end of Trump's first term. While some of those, there were executive orders. As we know, of course, executive orders can be changed on a dime, which they have been in the Trump administration. But the laws that would have closed these loopholes, they didn't go forward in the first 2 years of the Biden administration when there was that opportunity. So laws against things like Schedule F, which allows the politicization of the civil service, basically undermining 150 years of civil service reform that you need to have a functioning democracy. A lot of these loopholes in the ability of business to occur by a sitting president, none of those were closed off in the first 2 years when the Biden administration had the chance. The Trump administration has now taken a Mack truck to those, if you will. They've just taken those loopholes that they'd already found, and they've just blasted through them in really new ways. And I think that's where we stand today. He's just really good at finding the legal loopholes and sometimes the illegal ones. And just, we talk about the guardrails of democracy. He is really good at figuring out the ways to crash through those guardrails.
Yeah, so assuming that these loopholes won't be closed under his administration, you said he's great at crashing through the guardrails. In your view, more widely, are they strong enough for U.S. democracy for it to resist a president using the office for personal enrichment?
Unfortunately, that's what we're going to find out. The United States, we've never had a situation like this in the world where sort of the world's, the leading state power in the world, the leading democratic state power in the world, has been in a position with leadership that was willing to engage in what looks to be moving towards kleptocracy, which is rule by thieves, or state capture, whichever terminology you want to use in that situation. We've never had this situation before. A lot of all democratic systems work off of a series of norms and expectations that there will be enough people who support those norms that even if the leader himself isn't interested in maintaining those norms, those around them will push them and push the system and push and defend the institutions that keep that democratic system going. We really, at this point, don't know whether that's going to be the case. Normally, at this point, it would be Congress that would step in. That's how the founding fathers set things up. This idea that if men were angels, we wouldn't need government, and that the incentives of one branch of government to hold on to power would entice them to balance out the other branches of government. So far, Congress has not been willing to do that. It has not been acting in its checks and balance function. Many of the courts have been. I've seen some statistics that as much as 90+% of what the Trump administration has put forward to the courts have been blocked or otherwise stopped. Of course, we're early in the process. Courts take a long time. We're only 5 months into the administration, but so far they've blocked a lot of areas. This has been judges that come from both Republicans and Democrats. So they've been the primary check, but right now Congress is not. Can the judiciary continue to be that check? Will Congress start as that check? And then what will the citizenry do? They've always been seen as a check on government as well. So far, we have not seen the mass protests that we saw in the first Trump administration, and that's very concerning.
Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you again for sharing your insights with us on DW. That's Jody Vittori at Georgetown University.
Peace, fam. Leave your comments. Tell me what you think. Please like, subscribe, and share. Peace.